Falling whilst free soloing almost always means fatal consequences. It may then surprise you to know that there are accounts of free soloing having gone wrong from climbers who have survived to tell the tale. An especially terrifying account from James Lucas, who survived an 100-foot fall whilst free soloing, gives a unique insight into what it's like to survive a near-fatal accident, and what effect that has on a climber's body and mind. I'm Hannah Morris, and this is Climbing Explained, brought to you by Element. Before we get into James's story, let us go first back into the history books of free solo accidents, when Austrian alpinist Paul Preuss attempted to make the first descent of the North Ridge of the Mandelkogel. Whilst the details of the accident will never be known in full, what's certain is that Preuss fell to his death whilst climbing without ropes. He was just 27 years old. Sadly, a long list of climbers have followed over the years. In 1993, British climber Derek Kersey died while free soloing the Styx Lathe route on Sentinel Rock in Yosemite National Park. He was a free solo specialist, given the nickname Dr. Death for his propensity to solo hard routes in Colorado. In 2004, American climber Dwight Bishop fell whilst climbing alone and unroped along the Grand Traverse route on Grand Teton Peak in Wyoming. John Basher, a pioneer of free soloing, was lost in 2009 when he sustained fatal injuries in a fall in Mammoth Lakes, California. He held legendary status as a climber at the forefront of pushing the genre, and his death rocked the community, with many penning tributes to one of climbing's genuine legends. Before we get into accounts of free soloing having gone wrong, only for the climber to live to tell the tale, I wanted to have a brief word from the sponsor of today's video, Element. Element is an electrolyte drink mix formulated to help you manage your electrolyte needs wherever your lifestyle demands. It contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1000mg sodium, 200mg potassium and 60mg of magnesium. No sugar, no colouring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten and no fillers. Element is a fuss-free way to replace electrolytes lost during your climbing session, fending off muscle cramps and fatigue post-climb. It's even the exclusive hydration partner to Team USA weightlifting and many Olympic athletes. To try Element for yourself, head to drinkelement.com/climberscrag to get a free sample pack with any purchase and enjoy Element's risk-free guarantee. Now back to the video and some accounts of non-fatal free solo accidents. One only has to look back over the tragic timeline of free solo accidents to understand the seeming impossibility of surviving one. Miraculously, free soloists have fallen and lived to tell the tale, and at a baffling rate of incidents. In the 1970s, John Jablonski, a Yosemite climber most famous for his bold free solos and boundary-pushing climbing style in the Stonemasters era, fell from short circuit, a 511D. His fall was broken by a tree and he walked away, shaken, but totally unscathed. Climber Rick Kashner fell off the start of Spiderline, 511D, in Joshua Tree in the 80s, surviving the fall and sustaining just a broken arm. One of the UK's most accomplished free solo ascensionists, Julian Lyons, fell off a solo attempt of an E9/E10 7A climb called Hold Fast Hold True in Scotland, falling 30 feet and walking away unscathed, even returning to attempt the route for a second time. American soloist Michael Reardon fell from Kimchi, a 40-foot 511D in Malibu Creek, recalling the moment he fell with terrifying clarity. Just as I cut my feet loose, the hold, that bomber sloper, breaks. Seconds turn into hours as I watch the grip dissolve, and then I spy the landing. Large cobbles and upward pointing spikes. Visions of wheelchairs and coffins flash by. I madly helicopter my arms and twist my legs. My face slams into my right knee, cracking my cheekbone and blurring my vision. My left foot strikes a spine-breaking cobble and pops. My left wrist slams into the ground, snapping loudly. A small oak branch stabs my palm. My kidney takes a hit that has me pissing blood for the better part of 2 months. Unthinkably, Reardon survived, though his injuries were significant. The fall left him with 10 months of physical therapy to endure and several $1,000s in medical bills. Whilst it wasn't the accident that did eventually kill him, pioneer of soloing and legendary American climber John Basher also fell soloing in Boulder, Colorado on Cleaver Lever, a 512A. After successfully climbing the Crux Dino with a rope, he returned to the climb to solo it. Except when I finally went for the swing onto the bucket, I kept swinging and went flying into the sky over the edge of the ledge for a 30-foot flight. Basher not only survived the fall, but hiked half a mile into the town of El Dorado, fainting about 6 times. As recently as 2021, 31-year-old climber Josh Arada fell approximately 150 feet while free soloing on the Manure Pile Buttress in Yosemite. I'm pretty sure what happened is that I had a foot or a hand slip or both, and then I started falling. If I remember right, my back was against the wall and I was trying to scrape my heels in to slow down. It's less than vertical, I was using my palms to try and slow me down too. I was just trying to grab or do anything I could to slow down. A host of horrific injuries and the emotional impact of the incident have sworn him off free soloing, Josh explains. Walking is still unknown. At the moment, I'm paralysed from my ankles down. No feeling, no movement, and it's still unknown if that will ever change. In every account of free solo accidents in which the climber survives, it's impossible not to wonder, how? What does that do to the human body? Perhaps the most harrowing account of a free solo gone wrong comes from James Lucas's descriptions of his 100-foot fall from North Overhang in Joshua Tree in 2004. His reflections on his accident sharply bring into focus not just the physical impact of such a fall, but the lasting psychological and emotional damage left behind. Lucas fell on the 110-foot 5'9" North Overhang just as he was approaching the top. He describes the moment that changed his life in a visceral account that's difficult to listen to. Listeners should proceed with caution. I started to lose my balance and then I barn-doored, Lucas remembers. I fell 70 feet and hit this ledge, and then I fell another 30 feet and hit the ground. I tried to stand up, but my ankle was folded in half. My back was broken in 2 places, my elbow was sticking through my skin, and there was blood pouring out of the back of my head. Lucas's injuries were catastrophic. He suffered a seizure shortly after the fall, a fractured skull, broken cervical spine and lumbar vertebra, broken clavicle, broken ribs, a compound fracture of the elbow, a shattered left ankle, nerve damage to the right foot. Because he had to spend so much time in a hospital bed, Lucas developed a blood clot in his abdomen. Lucas spent 81 days in the hospital alone and countless more rehabbing injuries and enduring multiple surgeries. And beyond the physical damage, the deep psychological impact of his ordeal is reflected in Lucas's personal blog posts and writings since his fall. His reflections give a unique insight into the life-changing nature of surviving such an accident, one that's mirrored in varying degrees, or not at all, in interviews with free solo accident survivors. Lucas appears to grapple with philosophical questions of fate and redemption. I remember this speech therapist telling me, "You've been given a second chance at life. What do you want to do with it? How do you want to change it?" But all I could think about was going climbing again. He returned to North Overhang in 2009 and once again climbed it alone without a rope. "This time, if I fall, I want to die," he wrote in a blog post titled Catharsis. John Basher took a similar redemption arc. Far from hanging up his soloing shoes, he continued to solo after his accident until it took his life in 2009. He explains, "You appreciate soloing even more when you have this intimate understanding of the consequences related to this art form." And Michael Rawdon added a similar sentiment. "A fall while soloing is uncompromising, but she's my mistress for the rest of my life. Whether we've pushed beyond personal limits, settled into complacency, or suffered the fate of things beyond our control, we who practice the most challenging of sports know it as either a disaster waiting to happen or a spiritual journey with no comparison." Whilst many free solo accident survivors express a desire to climb again, their outlook does seem changed. "I would like to do some form of climbing," explains Josh Owada. "I have a friend who's an aid climber who told me paraplegic climbers have done big walls in some form or another. Even if I'm just jogging, I would like to do that. But since my injury is only ankle down right now, I hope I'll be able to figure out how to do some sort of aid-style climbing, if not free climbing. But soloing will be out of the books for good." And for those lucky enough to be able to learn hard lessons by proxy, experiencing the consequences of free soloing up close has shifted their outlook on the pursuit. "I soloed nearly every day for 5 years straight and never thought a thing of it," said a friend of Lucas's on an online forum. "I was not doing it to be rad, but I just loved the experience so much. Alone or with friends, soloing was such a part of my life, and some of my best experiences climbing have been ropeless. Then my main partner and one of my best friends hooked off the top of North Overhang one morning. It was just another morning warm-up for James, but it almost ended his life. I remember the somber mood, fear and alarm that gripped our group of monkeys. No one soloed for quite a while. Some have returned to the pursuit and others have not, but everyone thinks more about what they're risking now. It blows that James had to fall off a rock that day, but it saved lives, I think, mine included. One of us would have watched it." And as for Lucas, his outlook has changed, but perhaps not in the way you might expect. After returning to North Overhang, Lucas wrote, "I relived the pain of the ordeal as I struggled past my previous high point. I expected to find a panacea on the summit, but the answer to my medical bills, the limp, and the haunting dreams have eluded me. A lot of people are under this impression that if you're given a second chance, you need to change. But really, you should always be living the way you want to. It seems, if anything, a close shave with the consequences of a free solo accident often makes those involved even clearer on their zest for climbing and living a life of intention, whether they continue to solo or not.
Enjoyed that video? I bet you'll love this one. Go on, click it.